Moving on to chapter number 2, the rules of MTG. A game of MTG functions on a core set of rules. Each card that is played expands this set of rules for the duration of the game. The golden rule is, reading the card explains the card, and therefore the rules it represents. To understand what we read on a Magic card, we will next focus on how to read a card correctly. Let's take a first look at the card structure. We have a name to identify the card, a type and subtype relevant for synergies and card effects, the abilities, rules text and reminder how the card interacts with the basic rules of the game, Power and Toughness relevant for combat, exclusive to creatures, ManaCost, how much of your resources it costs to play the card, the set symbol, in which set this card got printed, and the flavor text, only important for storytelling with no relevance to actual gameplay. Now a slightly deeper look into each of those elements. The name of a card helps to identify it. There are no two cards in the MTG card pool that share a name. This guarantees flawless play regarding game actions that need you to name a card. There are 9 card types in MTG: Land, Creature, Enchantment, Artifact, Planeswalker, Battle, Sorcery, Instant, and Typal. Some types have subtypes. In this example, the card type is Creature, and the creature type is Angel. The card type is Artifact, the artifact type is Equipment. Some cards have super types. The card type is Sorcery, and the super type is Legendary. And some cards have both. The card type is Planeswalker, the super type is Legendary, and the Planeswalker type is Chase. The first 6 types are additionally called permanents, because they stay on the battlefield after they are played. We will now go another level deeper and dissect the rules and functions of each of those types. Lands primarily serve the function to generate mana when tapped, which is needed to cast spells. There are 5 different lands with the super type Basic, with their coherent basic land types: Plains, Island, Swamp, Mountain, and Forest. A land with a basic land type can inherently produce mana of its corresponding color. A deck may contain any number of basic land cards and, depending on strategy, should contain around 30 to 40% total lands to function properly. Lands can have other subtypes relevant for synergies and other interactions. Some lands cannot produce mana but have other useful abilities. A player can play 1 land per turn. As we just mentioned it, a little side note for tapping. Tap is a keyword action that is usually represented on cards with the tap symbol. To tap a card, you turn it 90 degrees from an upright position. Tapping is a core mechanic in MTG. Tapping symbolizes a card spending its energy or doing its thing and then having to rest or refresh until it can do its thing again. Lands must be tapped to produce mana. Creatures must be tapped to attack. A lot of abilities demand tapping as a cost. Back to card structure, and the most common card type in MTG, creatures. Depending on their color, creatures can have vastly different abilities and support unique strategies. Some represent generic inhabitants of certain planes, and some represent specific individuals with more importance to the story. These are legendary creatures. Legendary creatures and high mana cost creatures tend to have more complex abilities. Here is an overview of all different creature types in the game until the set M21, sorted by their appearance on individual cards and the colors. Special thanks to Not Quite Vertical over on Reddit for his effort of creating this table. The next type is Enchantment. Enchantments represent persistent magical effects, usually remaining in play indefinitely. Saga is a special subtype of enchantment. Sagas have different effects every turn and sacrifice themselves after their last effect. Case and class are another two subtypes that change their effect over time under certain conditions. Auras are enchantments that need to be attached to certain permanents or players and influence their target. Artifacts represent magical items, animated constructs, pieces of equipment, or other objects and devices. Equipments are artifacts that can be attached to creatures to add to their power and toughness or other abilities. Vehicles are artifacts that can become creatures until the end of turn. Most artifacts can be played with generic mana, though some can demand colored mana to be played or activate abilities. On to Planeswalker. The player's thematical identity is a Planeswalker. Planeswalker cards therefore represent powerful allies. Planeswalker enter the battlefield with loyalty counters. They have abilities to gain or spend loyalty counters. Planeswalker abilities can be activated once per turn. Players can attack Planeswalker, like they can attack opponents to reduce their loyalty counter. If a Planeswalker's loyalty is 0, it's put into its owner's graveyard. The most recent card type is Battle. Battles are attackable permanents with abilities. Each battle enters the field with defense counters on it. This shows how much damage it takes to defeat that battle. When a battle's defense reaches 0, the battle is defeated and rewards its controller. Currently all battles have the subtype Siege. Sieges enter the battlefield with their front side. When defeated, the controller casts the backside. Sorceries represent slow but powerful one-shot or short-term magical spells. They won't be put onto the battlefield. After their effect, they are put into the graveyard, which will be explained in chapter zones. Like permanents, sorceries can only be played during a player's own main phase. Main phase will also be explained later in chapter turn and phases. Instants represent quick and reactive one-shot or short-term magical spells. They won't be put onto the battlefield. After the effect, they are put into the graveyard. Unlike sorceries, instants can also be played in an opponent's turn whenever a player gets priority. Priority will be explained later in chapter turn and phases. Typal is a very niche card type. Some cards are Typal in addition to their other types. Typal cards can have and count as creature types. It can appear on any other card type, but was very scarcely used and has no real importance for a beginner level understanding of the game. Cards can have multiple types. If they have multiple types, every characteristic of each type is relevant and taken into account regarding game actions. The majority of interaction in a game comes from a card's abilities. There are 4 main types of abilities. Spell abilities are abilities that are followed as instructions while an instant or sorcery spell is resolved. Activated abilities have a cost and an effect. They are easily spotted through the column. Every ability with a column is an activated ability. Triggered abilities have a trigger condition and an effect. They usually begin with the words when, whenever, or at. Static abilities are written as statements. They are simply true. Static abilities create continuous effects which are active while the permanent is on the battlefield and has the ability. Some spell abilities and static abilities are simply shown as keywords. Sometimes a keyword has a reminder text behind the keyword to further explain in what ways the keyword influences the current rule set. More information and a list of the most prominent keywords will be found in the subchapter Keywords&Cheat Sheet. On creature cards we can find Power and Toughness. They can be found in the lower right corner of a card. The left number is the power and the right number is the toughness of the creature. As an example, Woody Tokta has a power of 5 and a toughness of 4. Power is the amount of damage it deals in combat to the opposing creature's toughness or the opposing player's life total. Toughness is the amount of damage needed to destroy the creature. If at any time the toughness of a creature is 0 or less, for example through a -X effect, the creature is put into their owner's graveyard. Power and toughness can change and be influenced during the game. Lightning Bolt is played, targeting Woolly-Tochtha, dealing 3 damage to it. Woolly-Tochtha is too tough for Lightning Bolt to destroy it. It survives with 3 damage on it. The damage is healed at the end of turn. In the next turn, Flame Slash is played, targeting Woolly-Tochtha and dealing 4 damage to it. Woolly-Tochtha is not tough enough to survive Flame Slash. It dies and is put into the graveyard. In our next game, we play Glorious Anthem. Woolly-Tochtha gets +1/+1, making it a 6/5. Flame Slash can suck it now. Tochtha survives with 4 damage and is ready to attack in our next turn. To play cards like Tochtha or Anthem, we have to pay their mana cost. The mana cost of a card can be found on the top right corner. It's the default cost to cast a spell. Lands don't have mana cost. Lands are not cast. A player can play 1 land each turn during one of their main phases. To play Lightning Angel, you must pay a red, a white, a blue, and a generic mana, which can be paid with any type of mana. The total number of mana in its cost added up is a card's mana value, formally described as converted mana cost. The mana value of Lightning Angel is 4. There are different varieties of mana costs. Mana of the 5 colors and generic mana, hybrid mana, which can be paid with either one of the 2 portrayed colors, Phyrexian mana, which can be paid with the corresponding color or 2 life, or a combination of both. These costs can appear on abilities too. There are cards that cost 0 mana to cast. The mana value of a card that costs 0 mana to cast is 0. They can be cast as usual spells. There are cards that have no mana cost. Their mana value is also 0. They cannot be cast as usual spells, because you cannot pay non-existing costs. They have abilities with alternative ways to cast them. There are cards with X in their mana cost. X can be paid with any amount of mana the player wants to pay. In any zone besides the stack, the mana value of X will be counted as 0. More on zones and the stack in later chapters. As conclusion to card structure, we have set symbol and flavor text. Both are not relevant to playing the game. The set symbol only serves an identifying function, and the flavor text only an entertaining function to act as a storytelling device. Cards are the only actual game piece that you'll need to play, and these cards can be located in different zones. The battlefield is a game zone where permanents persist after being played. The library is the pile of cards from which you draw cards. At the beginning of each game, your deck is shuffled and placed as your library. Then you draw your opening hand of 7 cards. Your hand consists of the cards that have been drawn. You can play cards from your hand. The graveyard is the place where instants and sorceries are placed after they resolve. Permanents are placed from the battlefield after they are destroyed, or creatures when they die. The exile is a separate zone, where cards are placed when game actions demand it. The command zone is only relevant for one certain format. The stack is a very important zone where all spells are placed upon casting and remain there until they resolve. The main objective in a game of MTG is to win, and you can reach this goal by various win conditions. You can win a game of MTG in multiple ways. Either all your opponents lose the game, or you win with an alternative win condition. Players lose a game when they have 0 life or less, when they have to draw a card but there are no more cards in their library. Players also lose a game when they have 10 or more poison counters, or when an ability states it. Players also can win a game when an ability states it. There are cards that prevent players from losing or winning. Now we will deep dive into the most complex zone and one of the most complex and outstanding rules of MTG, the stack. The stack is the game zone where spells and abilities are put when they are played and where they wait to resolve. Resolving something means performing all game actions the respective text demands or putting a permanent onto the battlefield. Any spell or ability that uses the stack can be responded to by all players. Meaning, in the respective turn order, every player has a chance to play spells and abilities with it still on the stack. This is called getting priority. Only instant spells or activated abilities can be used to respond to something. The stack is a defining rule set of MTG, which sets it apart from a lot of other card games. Remember that you can react to nearly everything an opponent does. Use this opportunity. Timing can be important. The stack resolves in order from top to bottom. Those spells and abilities will resolve before the spell they were played in response to. Last in, first out. A small example. Player A has Una's Prowler on the battlefield. Player B wants to remove it while playing Shock, which would deal 2 damage and destroy Una's Prowler. Player A responds to it with a Giant Growth, adding to Prowler's toughness so it does withstand the shock. To which B responds by playing Dictate of the Twin Gods. Then both players pass priority and the stack can resolve. First, Dictate of the Twin Gods is put onto the battlefield, and its effect immediately doubles all future damage of the respective sources. Then Giant Growth resolves, buffing Prowler to a 6/4. Now Shock resolves and wants to deal 2 damage to Prowler, but this effect gets replaced by Dictate of the Twin Gods and Shock deals 4 damage instead. Una's Prowler takes lethal damage and is put into the graveyard. After we learned how to read a card and where to put them, we get to the time structure and when to put our cards anywhere, in turns and phases. A turn is structured into different phases. Most phases are made up out of different steps that determine the different actions a player can or has to perform at that time. There are 5 phases in a turn: beginning phase, main phase, combat phase, second main phase, and ending phase. The beginning phase is the first phase in a turn. It consists of 3 steps. First, the untap step. In this step, a player untaps all their permanents by turning them upright. Now they can be used again to pay for any cost that includes tapping it. Followed by the upkeep step. In this step, any abilities on a card that trigger during the untap or the upkeep step are put onto the stack. At last, the draw step. In this step, the active player draws a card from their library, and any abilities on a card that trigger during the draw step are put onto the stack. The second and fourth phase of a turn is a main phase. In their main phase, a player puts any abilities on the stack which trigger at the beginning of the main phase, can once per turn play a land from their hand if the stack is empty, putting it onto the battlefield as a special action which does not use the stack, and can cast creature, artifact, enchantment, planeswalker, battle, or sorcery spells if the stack is empty. The first main phase is followed by the combat phase. It consists of 5 steps, starting with beginning of combat. Any abilities which trigger at the beginning of combat phase go onto the stack. Then the active player gets priority, which then gets passed to the other players, so everyone can use abilities or cast instants to affect the upcoming combat or stop creatures from attacking. Next up is Declare Attackers. The active player decides which of their creatures attack and what player, Planeswalker or battle they are attacking. Only untapped creatures can attack. Attacking causes a creature to be tapped. After that, declare blockers. The defending players decide which of their creatures block and which attacking creatures they are blocking. Only untapped creatures can block. Players can block one attacker with multiple creatures. When all blockers are declared, we move on to combat damage. Attacking creatures deal damage equal to their power to their blockers and their attacked players, Planeswalker or battles. Blockers deal damage to the respective attacker. Creatures with first strike or double strike deal damage before other creatures. After damage is done, we go on to end of combat. Any abilities which trigger at the end of combat go onto the stack. The active player gets priority, which then gets passed to the other players. When the step ends, all creatures, battles and planeswalkers are removed from combat. After the combat phase, there is another main phase. It's referred to as second main phase or post-combat main phase. Functionally, it's the same as the first main phase. A turn is finalized by the ending phase. It consists of 2 steps. The end step, where any abilities which trigger at the end step go onto the stack, and players get priority, which is usually the last opportunity for a player to perform any action before the next player's turn starts. After that, the cleanup step. The active player discards cards from their hand to their maximum hand size, which is usually 7. All damage on permanents is removed, and effects that last until the end of turn end, and then the turn ends itself. As with nearly all elements in Magic the Gathering, there are some cards that influence steps and phases. They can be added, taken away, or be delayed. To help memorize some of the most common rules text on cards, they are made into keywords. A keyword ability is a word or a combination of words that represents a piece of rules text describing an ability present on a card. It is the replacement of an exact line of text and meant to free up space on a card and simplify reading it. Many keywords are summarized in reminder text, especially in core sets. A full list of keywords can be found here. This cheat sheet will focus on the most common and the least intuitive keywords, mostly found on creatures. First, the combat-related keywords. Defender means the creature cannot attack. Haste means the creature can attack the turn it was played. Vigilance, it can attack without tapping. Flying, it can only be blocked by flying creatures. Intimidate, it can only be blocked by creatures of the same or no color. Fear means can only be blocked by black creatures or artifact creatures. Landwalk means it cannot be blocked if the defending player controls a land of the corresponding land type. Menace means it can only be blocked by 2 creatures. Reach, it can block creatures with flying. First strike and double strike deals combat damage before creatures without it, or before and with creatures without first strike. Lifelink means damage dealt by this source causes its controller to gain that much life. Trample means if the attacker's dealt damage exceeds the damage needed to be lethal to the blocker, the excess damage is dealt to the attacked player, planeswalker, or battle. And Death Touch means 1 damage of the source is enough to be lethal, regardless of the target's toughness. Now the board state related keywords. Shroud means the permanent can't be the target of spells or abilities. Hexproof means the permanent can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Ward means spells and abilities your opponents control that target the permanent will be countered unless the ward costs are paid. Indestructible means the permanent can't be destroyed and won't be put into the graveyard because of lethal damage. Regenerate means if a permanent is regenerated, it won't be destroyed the next time it is destroyed. All damage is removed and it gets removed from combat. Protection from X is the most complicated one. If a permanent has protection from a certain quality, several effects will be granted. Damage by sources with the quality X is prevented. The permanent can't be enchanted or equipped by anything with quality X. The permanent can't be blocked by creatures with quality X. The permanent can't be targeted by anything with quality X. Cumulative upkeep cost means during its controller's upkeep phase, an H counter is placed on this permanent. Then they may pay the cost for each H counter or sacrifice the permanent. Some keywords alter the way a card can be played. Kicker means the card has an additional optional cost which grants it additional effects. Buyback means the card has additional costs which will grant it to be placed back into the hand after resolving instead of the graveyard. Flash means the card can be cast whenever the player could cast an instant spell, regardless of its original types and the cast rulings for the original type. Flashback means the card can be cast from the graveyard instead of your hand and is then removed from the game after resolving. Affinity for X means the casting cost of this card is reduced by 1 generic mana for each permanent you control which inherits quality X. Storm means when you cast this card, the spell is copied for each other spell that was cast this turn. Morph means the creature can be played face down as a generic 2/2 creature for 3 mana and later be turned face up for its morph cost.